Testing for YouTube, testing 1, 2, 3.
YouTube test 1, 2, 3.
Mayor Minions, can you hear okay?
Yeah, I can hear, thanks.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Apologize for being a minute late. Our last meeting ran a little bit over, so thank you for your patience. Council would like to acknowledge and recognize that we work, live, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Shuswap and Huipachesset First Nations. And we have an agenda. Any late items identified by councilors? Seeing none, is there any late items from the corporate officer?
No late items, Chair Haggard.
Thank you. And could I get a motion the agenda be approved as circulated? Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And I should say, I apologize, Mayor Minions is not able to be with us today, but she is online. So we have minutes of the special meeting held at 4:20 p.m. and regular council meeting held at 2 p.m. on March 25th, 2024. Is there any errors or additions?
Move to adopt.
Moved by Councillor Solda, second by Councillor Dame. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We have an introductions from Director of Finance to introduce our new manager of asset management initiatives.
All right. Well, thanks, Council. I'm very excited today to introduce Keith Orchinson. He's from, originally, he was out in Tofino for the district for about 8 years. He's worked in the asset management over the last year, but also prior to that, he was with the emergency planning work at the district. So we have someone who's coming in that has some local government experience as far as asset management. So it's something that's you know, I think we've talked about as staff to council over the last couple of years. You've supported that with this position, and now we have a great individual that we can start assigning work to in that field. But really excited to have Keith on the team, and looking forward to bringing him to council and sharing some great asset management work. So he's the manager of asset management initiatives. So.
Welcome, Keith. Do you want to come and say a few words?
Yeah, for sure. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the welcome there, Andrew. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm really grateful to be a part of such a great organization. I've spent the last week doing orientations and met many kind and welcoming city employees from every department. And it just really speaks to the organizational culture here. So really glad to be here, looking forward to the challenges that lie ahead with implementing our asset management system. And as Andrew mentioned, I do come from that background in Tofino. I originally started in emergency management and developed the program there for the local government, and moved on to asset management as well. So I do bring some background with me, and again, looking forward to getting going here. So thank you. I won't take any more of your time.
Is there any questions from council? Great. We look forward to working with you, and welcome to the community.
Thank you so much.
We have unfinished business, the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary. Summary of questions and responses as it relates to the 2024 to 2028 financial planning process. Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with the Q&A, I think we've answered most of the questions. There's a few outstanding. Some will take a little bit more time, but we will make that commitment to follow up on that. Gathering the information and then having it in maybe a different format, but we'll bring that and finish up the 3 outstanding items included: an FTE request, the museum request as far as a breakdown of the changes, and the development services like the building inspection fees and the breakdown by classification. So we have those 3 outstanding, but other than that, I believe all the questions have been answered in the Q&A.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments from council? Great, thank you, Andrew. Next, we have staff reports. Councillor Solda.
Madam Chair, I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated April 8th, 2024 be received and checks numbered 154641 to 154703, inclusive, in payment of accounts totaling $850,367.14 be approved.
Moved by Counselor Solis, seconded by Counselor Neely. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is our 2024 to 2028 financial plan adoption. Andrew, do you have any comments?
Madam Mayor, yes, I do. Just noting that with the revised role, you can see in the staff report that the charge for the average single-family residential home has gone from 9.16 to 9.29, and of course, this is the role that we set our tax rates with. So we provided the estimates based on the completed roll that's issued at January 1st of the year. And then when we have the revised rule, that's after any appeals or any changes that are made. And that was just issued the last week of March. So that now reflects what we'll be bringing forward in the tax rates if council does support adoption of the financial plan. And this would be the communication point that we would be sending out to the public as far as how the impact is on that single-family residential home, as we have done in the past few years. And then, of course, we'll update council on comparables as we go through the year, as we get that information.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions or comments from council? Council Solda.
Could you explain to the public, because they don't have the document, might not be in front of them, what that change means? I know the average home and how much an average home would be and everything. Just give a little more to that. Thank you.
Most certainly, Madam Chair. So what I'll do is I'll just start with the formula that how this is created. So we take all the average, the total amount of the single-family residential values divided by the total value or total number of the homes in that classification, and then divide that to get that single-family residential rate, and that's compared year to year. And this is a difference of 215.04 in 2024 over the 2023 year. And this is for a home that's valued at $518,000, and this is slightly down over last year. But if your property remained approximately the same or went down about 2%, your taxes were about the same as the single-family residential home, then you would see that approximately $215 increase. But if you have a higher value home, that would be factored up, or if you have a lower valued home, that would be factored a little bit lower. It's just, everything is independent. So we can't pinpoint a specific number, but we use this average amount. So if you've gone up by the average amount and your taxes are going up by 9.29%, that would be the increase for your property. If you've been at average. If you're below average, it would go down slightly. Based on the percentage, but there's so many variables that you can't pinpoint or can't pull out one. So the average single-family residential home has been the basis. It's the basis that we provide annually. It's also the basis that the province use when we do, when we do comparables. So that's it. That's how we portrayed it since I've been here, since before I was here, and continue to do that to this day.
What's really interesting is I had people approach me that we should have kept bumping it up so we could be ahead of the game for comparing to next year. And then, of course, there's a lot of people who want it down even further, which I understand too. So the happy medium. What would have been really great too is to have some more little bars and graphs for the public to see, like 215 means how much money throughout the year for a cup of coffee or something else, right? Like, just because $215 at once just takes people away. And I'm just putting out there, it would have been great, maybe next year we could do better and have these bars and graphs where it's a little more visual for some people. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council for Andrew? Seeing none, Councillor Mealy, would you like to make the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5097-2024 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Corporate Officer and numbered 5097.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, second by Councillor Douglas. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Before we move on, I just want to thank Andrew and his wonderful staff in the financial department for all their hard work they've done this year. I know it's a tremendous amount of pressure that you put on yourselves to come up with a viable budget, so thank you for all your hard work. Tax rates bylaw, that will be Andrew again.
Yes, thank you. So, I think when we talked about the revised roll, completed roll, we can't really set the tax rates until we get that revised rule. So now that we have that, it's provided here for council to consider. What I've tried to do in the report is provide some information just on the light industrial tax rate, some history that we had in there, because I think there was some information that council was seeking. So I'll go over that, but knowing that we do also set the tax rates for the Alberni-Clayquat Regional District and the Alberni-Clayquat Hospital District, and those are set within our bylaw. And we also have a component for Vancouver Island Regional Library service and off-street parking for a small component of service area in the downtown core. And we do have some debt and then our general municipal taxes. So those are the classifications that council will be considering today. With that, when we look at the tax split or the tax share across all the components, we see that the residential is really the largest component, noting that in the past that the taxation in class 4 major industry was around 40%, and now that sits at 18. So there's been a shift over time, but we have seen some growth in light industry. And that was about half a percent back in 2020, but now that's grown to 3.18. So I think we're seeing some shift. There's a slight increase in the business class, and that includes some allocation of the non-market change. So there was a resolution from council that we take the non-market change from light industry and in business class and allocate that to the asset management reserve, which our new manager will be happy to hear that council made that commitment. It is a commitment to making sure that we renew those assets. So it's something that we will bring forward as far as recommendations moving forward, as far as that growth component within the role, and seeking maybe support to have that allocation across all classes. When we look at the major industry and light industry rates, those two rates were historically linked, and they were linked because we had major industry and light industry, and the type of properties were like. But when we seen growth in light industry, we had a component of the light industry group that lobbied council back in 2021 that sought to kind of separate that link, and that there's going to be new investment coming into that. So when the tax rates were set in 2020, there was no allocation of that share across, and then it really decreased the rate in major light industry, and that was about a spread of about 35 cents per thousand, or $35 per thousand. And then when you look at the commitment that was made by prior councils, that was at approximately $20. So that's been kind of the same value over the last 3 years, and that's why staff sought that commitment from council to continue that in this current year. So that currently sits approximately at that same level. And I provided the tax burden comparisons between 2006 and 2024 that's proposed. And we've seen quite a decrease in the major industry, but that was all the shift to residential class. So, but we do see that growth in light industry as we see more development in that classification. That includes, as I mentioned before, any manufacturing for the components within a brewery or a distillery or even a cabinet maker in the community. Those are the components within light industry. So with that, the rates are there for council to consider for 3 readings, and I'll take any questions if they are coming my way.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions or comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The petition made by light industry representatives to prior city council in 2020 resulted in a reduction of the light industry tax percentage paid, or the percentage burden of the tax roll. Is that information available for this council to consider? And in lieu thereof, are you able to make comments on specifically what the benefits are in the specific light industry tax rate? And what options are available to council to increase or decrease it?
Madam Chair, so in 2021, to summarize, what we saw was quite a growth in one light industrial taxpayer, and that was quite a increase in the anticipated taxation based on what they've seen in other locations. So we had a tax consultant that came forward in 2021 that was hired by this property owner to justify the case for having that rate different than major industry. And you have to understand that major industry is legislated, and their rates aren't market rate. It's a legislated rate, and their amortization is much faster than it would be of light industry. So at the time, council considered the nature of light industry and major industry to seek maybe a rebalancing of that. And of course, a lot of that light industry value that was added came from that one property owner, and that was something that was new to the community. We haven't seen that when we talk with the other major industry cities, Paul River being one. They're not seeing that same benefit to have that light industry into the tax rates. And we can see that across the province, major industry and light industry vary quite differently. It really comes down to what council would like to see as far as balancing of that tax rate across all the classes. And I think when we bring forward the recommendation to council, we try to look at having something that does that rebalancing. As we see growth in each classification, we note that we could increase the tax share, understanding that we did see some loss of major industry when the SOMAS site was purchased by the city. So that was historically around 22%. And then once the SOMAS property was brought on, it was dropped down to that 18%, but we did see the increase in light industry. So we've heard from others also in light industry that saw quite a significant increase, because sometimes your property is not valued at that classification until you might have a change. And one property owner was surprised at the difference between commercial and light industry when the tax bill came up and it was reclassified because of the nature of use of that property. So not only is it just the one, but it did impact some others, and we're seeing growth, and I believe there is an intent to bring more maker spaces, more growth in the light industry classifications. So I think all that discussion back in 2021 was trying to find that middle ground and trying to find a way to have a tax rate that reflects what council would like to see. And at that time, I think if you go back and you look at the reports and all the work that was done between council, the groups that were included in the lobbying effort to have that separation, that was where council finally agreed it was a fair rebalancing of that tax allocation. So I think council today wanted to see growth in that area, wanted to not discourage that, and I think that was the common ground. But as we see the need to increase the taxation and have that tax share and see growth in different areas, this was the recommendation that was brought to council. So if there's a change that council's seeking on this, I mean, we could do that. It might require some special meetings and more, but we do have to have our tax rate set by May 15th. So, and we do like to have that done beforehand so we could get all our reporting requirements and get, tax invoices and everything out in a timely fashion. So all that said is that, the recommendation brought forth is being somewhat consistent with what we've done over the past few years. If there's a desire of council to see a different allocation, we can have further discussion about that. But as staff is recommending today is that we do bring forward and have 3 readings of the tax rate bylaw to proceed. And if there's information that needs to be followed up on or further issues reviewed based on the 2021 discussion, I mean, we can bring that back to council to review.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, just a quick question, and that's the table 1 on page 58 that we're referring to, correct? Sorry, you probably don't have it in front. So it has residential utilities, and it says 60.59. Is it possible to bring that up so the public can see what we were talking on the screen, please? Thank you. That's all I wanted. I just wanted the public to see that too. '61, give more of a clear picture, which I thought we have a graph on it, so, okay. Whatever would give a clear picture of what you were just talking about there, Andrew. So my 59. That's what we were basically talking about with the changes, the proposed changes, correct?
So, Madam Chair, that is the allocation that's currently in the proposed tax rates bylaws that is presented to council today for consideration.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, or Madam Chair. The director's answer kind of provided me with more questions than answers. I noted specifically the statements that it's different for every community because it's up to council how they want to set it. So it's different for every community across BC, which says to me that it's somewhat arbitrary in that it's entirely open to council to make their views known, but yet an intelligent arbitrariness in that it's based, at least here in Port Alberni, on the reports from 2021. And I note the director said specifically, if you go back and look at the reports, you can see the reasoning. But I don't see the reports before me, so I don't understand the reasoning. And I would kind of like to know why one council decided on a somewhat arbitrary level, and the recommendation, without any reasons before us, is to just continue that arbitrary level that a past council decided on. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion to defer this to the next regular meeting of council and to have that background information provided so that this council can make an informed, intelligent decision on what the appropriate tax rate would be for light industry in order to promote that business and fulfill our tax obligations.
Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to try to give a little background if I could, just on a scenario at least. So when the report refers to 2006, so at the time, council decided to move 0.5% shift away from industry to residential and 0.2% away from industry to commercial, if I'm not mistaken, for a total 0.7%. And the reasoning mostly at that point was because the mill, I mean, it's 20 years later or so, but the mill decided to tell us that they didn't want to pay their taxes. And we had to work around it in a way to try to cut the industrial tax base a little bit without having to put it all on the residential. So that was my recollection of, I believe Councillor Solda can back me up on that. So that's just one scenario, I guess, or the one at least that we're talking about here. That would be the reasoning why every community is different, every council's different. There's different scenarios in which are unique to each council and every community. So that was the reasoning, at least for that time, why we decided to move away from heavy industry a little bit and put it onto the residential and the commercial taxpayer.
Thank you. I actually disagree. I think Andrew made a very good rationale for answering the question of why the rates were changed and why the rates were delinked. And at this stage of the game, I would not want to make any significant changes to that rationale that council has been working with for the last few years. If, however, I would suggest if council is not happy with those rates, sometime in the coming year before next financial budget time, we again have a consultant come in, work with us, look at those changes, compare them to comparative other areas, and then make changes for next year. I just feel like right now it's too late to make any significant changes. Oh, Mayor Minions.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that, firstly, I think that although it may require an additional meeting, to pause and go back and get a bit more information shouldn't harm us. So I'm in support of that, and largely because I just reflect back on what a significant conversation it was that we had in 2021. And I remember, I think it was 2020 and then again into 2021, but it was actually through COVID that we had these conversations. So we were in Zoom meetings. It was a significant amount of work, and there was a whole lot of context that went into it. So just to share a little bit, so firstly, I'll support the motion to defer because I think that to get some of those old reports, might add an extra meeting, but I think it will be better informed and able to make a better decision as a result. But I wanted to provide a bit of my memory context as well. So when Sand Group's mill came into the community, and I think we all know we're talking about Sand Group here. When Sand Group's mill came into the community, they came in with the expectation that their taxes would be a certain way, and they came in with that expectation largely, or partly at least, because they had that indicated to them by a previous elected official. What their expectation was that they would be in the heavy industry class, and that the growth within the class would dilute within that class, so that their overall, heavy industry tax rate of say 60 whatever would probably drop down to around 50, because their new assessment coming into that class would be diluting the class overall, saving them, reducing their rate, reducing Catalyst's rate, etc. I personally had a big issue with that approach as it was, because I think that new industry coming into the community needs to benefit the people who live in the community and not just industry. So we started a discussion, and it was through that process that it came to all of our attention, I think as quite a shock, that Sand Group actually ended up being assessed as light industry and not heavy industry. They believed they were going to be heavy industry. Staff to some point, until some point, believed they were going to be heavy industry. So when they moved into, so they're expecting to come in with a roughly 50 tax rate instead of the 60 that it was going to be at, which there wasn't, that wasn't a firm plan as it was, but it was their expectation. And then they actually got put in a different class, and putting them in that class by the old way that we did taxes, which was diluting the class, would have made us collect almost no taxes at all from Sand Group, because they were going to come into the light industrial class and just dilute that class and not actually add to the tax base. So what we did was not delinking to give Sand Group a tax break. It was a significant change in how we allocated those tax classes. It delinked, and then we set, really, you're right, Councillor Patola, an arbitrary rate at that time, but that arbitrary rate was significantly more than they would have ended up paying had their light industrial declaration just ended up diluting the tax class as it had throughout history in Port Alberni, because that's really how we used to do tax classes. So it's a very complicated topic. I would absolutely welcome more information for all of council. I think there are people who have been on council who are new, who probably have a hard time understanding all of this, and people who have been on council a long time who don't understand it, all aspects of it as well, because it is a difficult and challenging topic to comprehend, and there's a lot of moving pieces. And I just wanted to reference as well that there was one meeting that was had by Zoom where Sandgroup's consultant came and spoke to our council specifically with their rationales for how they thought things should go. I think that was an informative meeting and would be worth staff locating the date and council having the opportunity additional to the prior reports to watch that meeting. Because that presentation I thought was valuable. So anyway, sorry for the long kind of rant here, but it is a confusing topic, and I'll be in support of the motion to defer this.
Thank you for that additional information. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank Madam Mayor for her support. It really is helpful to have the historical context. That's important. However, what's most important from the historical context is understanding the factors that influenced the decisions and whether those factors still exist today, or if they've changed in some way, or other factors exist today. So back when that decision was made, it was not a decision that anybody could take issue with. But is that still the right decision for today? And that's why I feel it'd be of benefit to have that additional information. And so we can see what factors exist today. Perhaps it's an issue that this council might want to lower that amount. They might want to raise that amount, or they might want to keep it exactly the same because it might be the appropriate decision because those factors still exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before I call the question? Councillor Douglas?
Thank you. My feelings on this are not easy, not simple. It is, like as everybody's mentioned, it's a complex issue. I'm comfortable with moving ahead with the original motions that were put before us on the agenda. However, for one instance, also comfortable with a deferral to bring us some more information. My take on this, though, is that it's more than just a 1 or 2 meeting issue. It's something that could almost go into our strategic and long-term planning because there are a number of things we need to do as far as the different classes of industry. And then as our community develops, and I've mentioned this before, I think we need to start creating incentives for heavy industry or major industry not being on our waterfront, or at least paying appropriately for occupying our waterfront in an urban, living environment. And also looking at developing elsewhere outside of the urban environment, developing an industrial zone for heavy industry as an incentive for, creating benefits for them relocating. So it's just not one issue. But I welcome the conversation. I think it's a really good direction for us to go to. So I'm comfortable, with deferring this for one instance. But I do agree with Acting Mayor as well, is that we do have to move ahead on this. And so that's the way I feel at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, any final questions or comments? Andrew?
Madam Chair, so when I look at the tax share and seeking direction from council, if this is going to be deferred, where would we seek to shift the tax share among the classes? Are we looking at shifting more to residential and increasing the tax rate? Or are we looking at shifting more to major industry? Because we're trying to be consistent in our approach and setting the tax share across all the classes. So to shift anything around right now, I think council is going to need to consider what burden they're going to shift to the others. So I think it's an important question for administration to take back, where they want to put more tax or reallocate. Because right now I'm a little bit uncertain on what direction we would change in the actual tax share. So I think that's an important question for council to consider today.
You're absolutely right, Andrew, and I agree 100%. We've worked very hard over the last 3 months to bring that 16.86% down to 9.29. So I don't want to change those allocations at this stage of the game. Did you have any comments on his, because you made the motion, do you have any comments, Councillor Patola?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Absolutely. It's impossible to answer because I don't have the information in front of me. Where it should be changed, or if it should be changed or not changed or stayed the same, is a direct decision made on having information about how those rates are set in front of us so council can consider. We don't have that information. I'd like to adjourn or defer the motion so that we can get that decision. 2 weeks isn't going to kill us. We're still within the timeline.
Andrew?
Madam Chair, and time won't prevent it, but I'm seeking, where would council like to shift the burden? Because in the end, it comes down to shifting the tax burden, tax share across the classes. And that's the only thing, we have the revised roll. That is the tax rates that we're seeking. So in order to bring information forward to the committee or council to consider, I think we need to understand how council may want to shift the burden between each tax class.
I guess my question for you, Councillor Patola, is you're just wanting information for background on how the decision was made? Or are you looking for information so you can change the tax allocation at this stage of the game?
Madam Chair, neither. I am wanting the information that the previous decisions were based on so we can understand whether this council in this setting for this budget, not relying on some other council's decision that has been partially voted out and partially voted back in, or based on different factors that were occurring at a temporal point in the history of the city that is not today. I would like to know the information those decisions were based on to see whether or not today we view the budget and the financial requirements facing the city to be the same, in which case we can decide if we'll leave it the same. If they're wildly different, it is irresponsible for council to make decisions today based on inappropriate and irrelevant facts from yesteryear. So all I'm saying is that if this council is responsible to the electorate that put us in place for decision making, we should at least consider the information that's pertinent to a decision before making it.
CEO?
Yeah, thank you. If I think we could schedule a special meeting, defer this to next Monday before the CAL meeting, if that is council's wishes, and then we can have further discussion, and council will have some time to review all the information.
Thank you. Okay, someone call the question. All in favor to defer this till the next meeting? All in favor? Any opposed?
favor.
Motion carried. Next is correspondence for action. We have an email dated March the 18th, 2024 from Loaves and Fishes Community Food Bank Society in Nanaimo requesting support for the new Loaves and Fishes warehouse. Any questions or comments? I had one question. I don't know if staff will know or if council, any member of council will know. They're based in Nanaimo, but they said in their email that they do come to Port Alberni daily basis, but I've never heard of this organization. Does anybody know, have any information or know anything about them? CEO?
Thank you for the question. I don't know a lot of information. I don't have a lot of information. I know that they do come to our community and help out, but I don't have a lot of background on this corporation.
Thank you. Does anybody want to make this motion? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make the motion that council direct staff to prepare a letter to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities on behalf of the Loaves and Fishes Community Food Bank Society in support of their funding request to construct a new 25,000 square foot warehouse in Nanaimo, BC.
Moved by Councillor Patola, second by Councillor Solda. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is proclamations. We have a letter dated March 22nd, 2024 from the Foundation Emergence requesting a prompt confirmation for International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. Any questions or comments? Councillor Mealy?
If I may, Madam Mayor, move that council on behalf of Foundation Emergency proclaim May 17th, 2024 as International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia in Port Alberni.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is Walk for Values Human Values Days, email dated March 22nd, 2024 from Walk for Values requesting a proclamation. Any? Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move the council on behalf of Walk for Values proclaim April 24th, 2024 as Human Values Day in Port Alberni.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, second by Councillor Dame. Any final questions or comments? Councillor Patola.
I was just wondering if any councillors or staff have information on the Sathayas School. In the material that was provided, there was a link, or at least in the letter, they said there was a link to their society and what they were about or founded on, and I didn't find that link anywhere, so I wasn't able to research anything further. Just wondering if anybody knows anything that could add to the discussion.
Does it appear that anybody does? Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence for information. Corporate Officer, would you like to review the correspondence, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a number of items, starting with two from the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, and both of those are speaking to recent grant awards. The Food Security Emergency Planning Grant Award and Emergency Support Services Grant Award. Both of those were supported by Council, and moving forward, we'll be working in collaboration with the ACRD to get those initiatives going. There was an invitation from the Alberni Project Society and HMCS Alberni Museum and Memorial for an invitation to the 80th anniversary of the sinking of the HMCS Alberni. There'll be a ceremony and exhibit taking place August 21st, 2024. There was an invitation from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food for a presentation on land use planning for agriculture. The Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities shared a community investment grant from United Way BC. The town of Osoyoos requested support for a resolution that they'll be putting forward to UBCM for legislative changes related to personal and defamatory attacks on municipal leaders. The annual budget came in from Prime Corp. And lastly, there was a letter from Municipal Pension Retirees Association in support of the recent resolution that Council submitted to AVICC regarding seniors advocacy.
Thank you. Does anybody want to pull anything out? No? Seeing none, could I get a motion to receive the correspondence for information? Moved by Councillor Solda, second by Councillor Douglas. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Council reports. Does anybody want to pull anything out? Councillor Solda.
It's not actually to pull out anything. I just want to respectfully mention that a former employee who retired, a retired employee, Jack Payne, passed away. He was well respected amongst his peers as well as the general public. He was he's a retired RCMP member, and he was our bylaw officer, the only bylaw officer at the time, for many, many years. And I just want to say to his family, kudos. I'm so sorry to hear what happened, and wishing them all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Yes, please express our condolences to the family from Council. Thank you. New business, Island Health Community Wellness 2024 grant application.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I believe we need a motion to receive the councillors' reports. My apologies. And if so, I'd like to make a motion to receive the councillors' report.
Okay, thank you. I didn't
Sorry.
think there was any reports. Oh. Just a comment. Okay, new business, Island Health Community Wellness 2024 grant application. And who's speaking to this? Is it Sarah? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be speaking on behalf of our Manager of Community Safety and Social Development for this grant application request. And so we're seeking council approval for the application to the Island Health Community Wellness Grant Program. And so this speaks to applying for a one-time funding for community-led wellness projects that reduce barriers and increase supports, enabling all members of the community to enjoy health and wellness. The Port Alberni Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy is an initiative that is coming out of that department, and there's a number of projects that are working towards this strategy. And so this would address the goals of advancing diversity, connectedness, safety, and active living. We presently do not have a safety strategy, and so this would assess the current conditions, map out current services, pinpoint areas for improvement, and develop strategies to bridge those gaps. The project aims to collaboratively and proactively address the needs and aspirations of the diverse community by implementing strategic initiatives that promote inclusivity, safety, respect, and social harmony. As I mentioned, at present, staff are conducting 2 projects to support this and gather data and inform the strategy. So 1, staff are conducting an environmental scan of other municipalities' community policing and safety programs to determine what is working in their communities. And this information will be used to report to council on future community safety programs and strategies. Secondly, on April 24th, the city, in partnership with the Alberni Clayoquot Health Network and Island Health, Mental Health and Substance Use, are conducting a gap analysis workshop. And so the purpose of that workshop is to identify gaps in services to address current safety and social challenges in Port Alberni. The grant application, it provides 100% funding up to a maximum of $50,000 for partnership grants. And so funds are able to be used to hire or contract an individual to assist in the work, which is what staff are recommending that the funding be used for if we are successful. At present, staff are recommending that council authorize staff to apply for, receive, and manage grant funding for the April 12th intake of the Community Wellness Program, and further, to engage a consultant to develop the strategy upon the grant application being successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that information. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Douglas?
Just a sort of a financial aspect, I understand the grants for 50,000 if we get it. So is it a self-sustaining program, or would we hire a consultant for $100,000, or would it have an impact on our budget, in other words?
Mike, can you answer that?
Yeah, through the chair, it is $50,000 is self-sustaining funding. We will have to spend some staff time on it, but we are currently engaged in these activities and trying to come up with strategies. So this would just further the work in a faster pace.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dane, would you like to read the motion, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. So I move that council authorize staff to apply for, receive, and manage grant funding for the April 12th, 2024 intake of the Island Health Community Wellness Grant Program for $50,000 to develop a community well-being and safety strategy for the continuum of care of safety, security, and social services in Port Alberni, and further that council authorize staff to engage a consultant to develop the strategy upon the grant application being successful.
Moved by Councillor Dane, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is question period. This is an opportunity for public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. A maximum of 3 questions will be permitted per speaker. For those participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature. Would anybody have any questions? Mr. Anderson, please come on up.
Three things, mostly for clarification, and I try and do it in a calm manner. And, but I expect answers to my questions too. The first one is clarification, and I never read the full agenda, so I apologize for that. I did read some items. The walk for values, you may have addressed this. What exactly is it? Can someone, that may have been discussed by Councillor Petola or suggested, I wasn't sure. What is the walk for values? What does it imply? Because you voted for the motion, and so someone has to know.
Councillor Dame, do you have the answers?
I mean, simply defined on a brief Google search as Walk for Values is part of a global drive to see the human consciousness with timeless affirmations such as hope, kindness, patience, and honesty, along with other positive values deemed integral to sustenance and survival of mankind.
Thank you very much.
Hard to disagree with that, so. And I'm not looking for a way to disagree. Thank you. The second one is, again on the agenda, there was item E under correspondence for information. And basically it reads, support for legislation, let me do the right thing. Town of Asoya supports for legislation changes. And it mentions personal and defamatory attacks on municipal leaders. I wish I had checked further down the agenda. It probably had that letter. Can someone just enlighten me as to particularly what is the personal defamatory attacks on municipal leaders? That to me is important. It's an important statement to make, and I think we should have a little exchange on
Yeah.
that.
Thank you for that question, Mr. Anderson. Anybody that's an elected official in this day and age is constantly attacked through social media. And I think every one of us here has had some kind of attack personally. And it's not just here in Port Alberni. I know several leaders, especially females in other communities, that did not run in the last election because of personal attacks through social media.
And was that unexpected? Social media? I
Well,
don't even listen to it
just give you
anymore.
an example of my personal experience. In 2018, I found the election to be a very positive experience and met lots of nice people and made lots of good friends. And if I hadn't been successful in my bid to be a councillor, I would have said it was a really good experience. However, in the 2022 election, it was a totally different experience. And at this point, I would not encourage a female to run for office because of the experiences that the females on this council have had, plus other females that I've talked to.
Well,
Councillor Solda?
yeah.
And just so you know, Neil, this is going to be addressed at the AVICC. This is not just in Port Alberni, it's all over.
Yeah.
So it will be addressed, and the UBCM, I have no doubt it'll be addressed there too. FCM's talking about it because they've had some issues there too.
Yeah, I'm just get concerned mostly because of what happened with their code of ethics, how far that goes to maybe restrict what some people may say, and I don't want to get into that. I'm just very cautious about that. Anyway, you've answered my question for the time being, that's fine. Item G, I'm not going to get into that. I promised someone this morning that I wouldn't, because there's some issues there that I'm not aware of. And I didn't get an answer at the last meeting from Cindy, and let's not go over it again. And so I'm leaving that one alone because I did promise someone to do that. And I want to mention something else if I may. I've talked to quite a few people in the last 2 weeks and asked for input regarding, because there was a little issue went on last week outside after the meeting, and frustrations and how you deal with them. And I'm actually trying to find out, how do you get questions from, it's a question, how do you get questions from members of the city council? It's often you don't. Like I asked the question of Cindy about the seniors advocate, Mackenzie, sorry. And it was an interesting meeting. I enjoyed going there. I enjoyed getting the update from her on the statistics. I already knew them from years back, but it was an update. It didn't change much. Percentages change. And so when I asked for what was going to happen when this resolution you passed was going back to the municipalities, I wasn't talking against it. I wanted clarification and what you thought would come out of that. And I never really got that. You talked about Mackenzie's presentation, which was a good one. And I was hoping I'd get a little bit more. And I've been sort of suggested I was talking against that. I wasn't. I'm open to it, but I'm not convinced that it's and that's all I'm going to say on that because I promised someone I wouldn't.
Thank you. Councillor Solda?
But I'm not going to stop from saying
Please don't
something.
get into it. Because
No. What I want, you asked what will come out of this motion. This motion will hopefully that the ministry will start a caucus group amongst the UBCM members, which consist of mayors and councillors. And that's what I'm hoping for. And from there, they will make up the terms of reference. Also on the Mackenzie report, that they will adopt. If you look in the back of that manual, there's a report that she would like to see get adopted for rural seniors. And I'm hoping that the UBCM will adopt that and send it to the government, and the government will also move forward with that adoption. So that is what I'm hoping will happen. And from there, that it'll morph out and it will benefit the seniors in Canada, BC, wherever, as long as it's, I'm going bigger from BC to Canada itself.
And
So that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, and municipalities with.
Well, that, we are part of that. So, and then from there, who knows what the municipalities will do from there. So you got to start from the top and work your way down. Sometimes you go from the bottom and hopefully the top will take over and then we can move forward to something.
Sometimes that works well too.
Yes, so it's, yeah.
So anyway, that's as far as
Okay,
I want to
thank
go
you.
on that discussion because as I said, I made that promise. Thanks very much. That's gives me a better idea.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We have a question online. Charlene, your turn. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead, Charlene. Are you able to speak into your microphone, Charlene?
That's correct. Yes, she has to unmute.
Charlene, can you unmute yourself if you want to speak? Okay. Is there any other questions from participants? Mr. Kanigieser.
Good afternoon. Interesting meeting today. Very simple to pass the 2024-28 financial plan. Really no discussion. All seemed to be in favor. That was the easy part. Then you came to the discussion of tax rates, which should be an easy part. But as Councillor Patola points out, it's not easy. Basically, what you have to do is simply decide how much of that $3.4 million tax increase that you want to get from the various property groups. How much from residences, how much from heavy industry, and it can be just an arbitrary decision. Perhaps that's what happened in city councils before. Oh, let's make 81% here and 16% there, and I'm done. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to get information and been able to decide how that tax share should go. But as I said, you've passed the financial plan now. It increases the tax revenue by $3.4 million, some 12.3%. And I ask, are you satisfied with that? Is that the best position that, as council, you believe we should be in the city in this coming year?
That's a good question. I think we did the very best we can with the resources that we have. We've talked about it. You said there was no discussion. We have discussed this for the last 3.5 months through several regular council meetings and committee of the whole meetings. So it has been discussed a lot.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Is in the budget documents you got, is there an analysis of where that $3.4 million is to be spent? Is it in salaries and benefits, new employees, utilities, capital spending? Is that analysis available to council?
Yeah, there is a breakdown of the budget. It wasn't in this week's council meeting, but I think it was in previous councils. Complete breakdown of the budget.
Well, I can see it in the very budget documents, but I guess I was looking for a one-pager that would say, you know, we've increased salaries because of compensation increases by this many million or this percent. New employees cost this much. Utilities have gone up this much. I mean, you know, it was a one-page summary of the, I don't know what to call it in your financial group, the objects of the expense. But anyway, that's something I think that would be useful for council to look at, because I assume going forward here soon, if you haven't already, you'll be relooking at the service levels that the city provides to the citizens. And a document to knowing where that money is going to be spent. And more importantly, in my mind, is the staffing information, because 50% or close to 50% of your costs are employee related. So in delivering those service levels, how many employees do you have? How many has been increased over the last 5 or 10 years? In what departments? Are they pulling their weight? Are they doing the right amount of service levels? That's the question that council has to raise to justify the increases in the taxes from 27.8.
Yeah, I believe Mike was going to respond. You had your hand up, Mike?
Yeah, through the chair, it's a complex question, but it does come down to service delivery and what does the city offer to the residents. And I believe over this coming year, we're going to be breaking it down and making sure that we are offering the services residents want. Whether that is through city forces or contract services, there's different ways. There are lots of other parts of the city that are service levels are set by nonprofits. And so there are many ways of delivering services in a municipality, depending on what the public wants to. And everybody has a different opinion on the service level. So the city has and council has directed staff to start the master planning process that helps to set those service levels based on public engagement. So we'll be doing that, but also we're talking with staff, contractors, and on all the different services we're providing. And we're going to be starting budget talks very shortly. So for next year, we have a better idea of the current service levels and whether they should be going up or down, and have lots of conversation and time for public and council to think on it. So I'm hoping it's a more thorough process and that we can have a more transparent service level discussion with the public and council.
Well, Mr. Fox, I agree with you entirely. It is a complex subject. Council cannot duck the responsibility they have to interpret the mood of the public, of the citizens, as to what services are appropriate to be delivered to the community and at what cost. That's council's job, with your input, of course. So my next question, of course, goes to the key. With the plan, you've now poised to complete the key pathway, which is costing Canadian, provincial, and city taxpayers in excess of $7 million. Some of the funding comes from grants at senior levels. That's true. However, about $1.6 million is taken from your Parks and Rec Reserve Fund for a pathway. Could that money be better used, tucked away for future spending for a new aquatic center? That's a question I think council really has to wrestle with. Another 1.2 million is allocated from the Growing Communities Fund. And looking at the criteria for that, there were about 10 or 12 suggestions of what that fund could be used for. And there was one in there, something about transportation networks that aren't funded by other governments or something. But all other things in there, sewers, water, roads, sidewalks, all these kind of things. Pools, recreation facilities are all in there. Yet council has chosen to take $1.2 million out of that 5-point-something million fund for a pathway. I don't think the minister, provincial minister in developing that fund, envisioned that communities were going to build a pathway rather than infrastructure and things that help the city. So I asked the question here. Will you as council here this afternoon instruct your administration to put an end to the Q pathway that links Harbor Key to Victoria Key along Dry Creek and the railway tracks? Yes or no?
Thank you, Mr. Canny-Geezer. Councillor Dane?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Canny-Geezer. I can only share my own perspective and why I voted the way that I have. To me, this pathway is vital infrastructure for our community. The increase, well, not even increase, it's been steady over the years of pedestrian deaths that we have seen in this community is a huge concern to me personally. And our roads are, quite frankly, have not been safe. And so even if you take the concept of this being purely for leisure and recreation and set it aside and think of it just on a functionality level, I feel that this is a necessary thing for our community, as there are a growing number of people who are on foot as they move throughout our community, and they're on bikes, and they're in wheelchairs. And so we have to create safe pathways for them to move about our community. And so that is just one of the benefits that it brings to our community. And then when you add the broad appeal of a pathway such as this for leisure, for exercise, for health for people of all ages, I have heard so many positive comments over the past few months about how excited people are that this pathway is almost finished and they can start utilizing it so that they don't have to run on dangerous sidewalks and along curbs, and they're going to be able to take their families on walks, and just positive after positive about how excited people are to use this pathway. And I will admit that I was a skeptic when I was elected. When the issue came up, I would say regularly that I had some pretty significant concerns just about the budget and the exact route of the path. And but as time has gone on and I've gained a greater understanding of what it means to this community, I have really grown to support it. And so I will continue to support it for those reasons. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dane. Thank you, Mr. Canny-Geezer. Appreciate your questions.
If I may just add, I'm really just speaking now of the connector between Harbor Key and Victoria Key. Take a
Mr. Canny-Geezer,
1,000-foot view of that.
Mr. Canny-Geezer, you've had your 3 questions, so this is not public input. You've had your 3 questions. I need to move on to the online question now.
I haven't had an answer from council. I had an opinion from Councillor Damon, and I haven't had an answer from council. Will
Okay,
you instruct
you've had a
administration to
response.
cancel
You've
it?
asked a question. You've had a response. Now I'd like to go to the question online, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlene, do you have your hand raised again? Can you unmute and ask your question? Charlene, can you unmute? You're muted again, Charlene. Can you ask your question? Unmute and ask your question. I guess she's having technical difficulties, so we'll call for adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Mealy, second by Councillor Douglas. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.